Professor Tom Gray stood at the entrance of the Galactic Academy of Sciences, looking up at the towering crystal spires that stretched into the purple sky. After 20 years of studying alien life forms, he was finally here to teach them about Earth. He adjusted his environmental suit's settings, compensating for the lower gravity that made him feel like he could float away at any moment. The Academy's halls buzzed with activity as students of various species hurried to their classes. Some floated, others crawled, and a few rolled like living balls. Tom noticed how they all gave him a wide berth, their environmental sensors probably warning them about the dangerous oxygen levels his suit was maintaining. Professor Gray, a floating orb of shimmering light, approached him. "I am Administrator Light. Welcome to the Academy. Your lecture hall is ready, though I must ask, are you certain about conducting live demonstrations? Our safety board has concerns." Tom smiled behind his transparent helmet. "Absolutely certain. Sometimes the best lessons need to be experienced to be understood." The administrator's light dimmed slightly, a sign of worry in their species. "Very well. But please remember our students are from the most advanced civilizations in the galaxy. They're sensitive to primitive biological processes." As they moved through the halls, Tom's enhanced hearing picked up snippets of conversation from the alien students. "Did you hear? They're letting a Deathworlder teach today. Earth? Isn't that the planet with corrosive rain? I heard they drink liquid hydrogen and oxygen mixed together. Barbaric. My parent unit says they regularly expose themselves to radiation for changing skin color. They call it tanning." Tom chuckled to himself. If they thought that was shocking, they were in for quite a surprise. The lecture hall was a massive amphitheater, filled with specialized environmental bubbles for students from different worlds. In the front row, Tom spotted the top students from various species. There was Blue, a crystalline being who had written award-winning papers on advanced evolution. Next to them sat Spark, a plasma-based life form who specialized in extreme environment adaptations. Even Rock, the silicon-based student who claimed their species was the peak of logical evolution, had shown up. As Tom walked to the center stage, the murmuring grew louder. Many students activated their protective shields, despite the fact that his suit prevented any human biochemistry from affecting them. "Greetings, future leaders of galactic science," Tom began, his voice translated into 20 different communication forms simultaneously. "I am Professor Gray from Earth, and today we begin our week-long exploration of what you call Deathworld biology." He pulled up a holographic display of Earth. Several students recoiled at the swirling white clouds. "Is that dihydrogen monoxide in gaseous form?" one student asked in horror. "We call it water vapor, and yes, Earth has quite a lot of it," Tom replied. "In fact, our planet regularly bombards us with it from the sky. We call it rain, and most of us quite enjoy it." The horrified gasps made him grin. This was going to be fun. But before we discuss Earth's weather, let's start with something simpler. Tom reached into his sample case. "Today we'll begin with basic Earth flora and fauna that humans regularly interact with. I've brought some living specimens." The entire front row moved their environmental bubbles backward. "Don't worry," Tom assured them, though his eyes twinkled with mischief. "Everything I brought has been thoroughly approved by Academy safety protocols. Though I should mention," he paused for effect, "these are what we humans consider completely harmless. In fact, some of them are what we give to our children as pets." The sound of multiple environmental shields being strengthened echoed through the hall. Tom suppressed another chuckle as he prepared his first demonstration. After years of humans being seen as primitive Deathworlders, it was time to show these advanced species exactly why Earth's life forms commanded respect. He opened the first sample container, and the lesson began. Professor Gray opened the first container and pulled out what looked like a simple glass box. Inside, a small patch of green grass swayed gently. The alien students leaned forward in their environmental bubbles, scientific curiosity temporarily overcoming their fear. This, Tom said, is a common Earth ground covering called grass. It grows everywhere on our planet's land masses. He placed the box on a scanner so the students could see the detailed readings on their screens. Blue, the crystalline student, was the first to react. Professor, there must be an error in the readings. This grass is actively producing oxygen as waste. That's correct, Tom smiled. Most Earth plants do this through a process we call photosynthesis. The lecture hall erupted in chaos. Several students activated their emergency protocols, their environmental bubbles gaining extra layers of shielding. But oxygen is highly reactive. Sparks' plasma form flickered in distress. It corrodes metals. It causes fires. You're saying your planet's surface is covered in organisms that release this toxic waste? Tom nodded. In fact, Earth's atmosphere is about 21% oxygen. We breathe it to live. 3 students promptly fainted. The medical staff, already on standby, rushed to help them. Now let's talk about Earth's gravity. Tom continued, pulling up another display. Our planet maintains approximately 9.8 meters per second squared of gravitational acceleration. Rock, the silicon-based student, made a sound like grinding stones. Impossible. No complex life form could evolve under such crushing force. The energy required just to move would be significant, yes, Tom agreed. He reached into his suit and pulled out a small weight. This is what we call a 1-kilogram weight. On Earth, this is what we give our young ones to begin their physical training. He placed the weight in a gravity-neutral field so the students could safely examine it. The readings caused another wave of shock through the classroom. But that's enough force to shatter most molecular bonds. One student chittered from the back. How do you maintain structural integrity? Tom pulled up an image of human skeletal structure. We evolved pretty robust support systems. In fact, our bones can heal from breaks by growing stronger than before. A student with a gaseous form condensed slightly in horror. You're saying your support structures can regenerate and become more durable. That's weapon-grade evolution. Speaking of weapons, Tom continued, bringing up the next display. Let's discuss Earth's background radiation levels. The entire class moved their bubbles back another meter. Our planet's core produces radiation. We receive it from our sun, and some of our rocks naturally emit it. We've evolved to deal with quite a bit of it. He showed them the average readings from a typical Earth city. Administrator Light, who had been watching from the doorway, flashed in alarm. Professor Gray, those readings, they exceed our safety protocols. Don't worry, Tom assured them. These are completely normal levels for Earth. In fact, some areas of our planet have much higher natural radiation, and we have people living there quite happily. Blue raised an appendage. Professor, according to these readings, your species evolved on what we would classify as a death world. Tom finished for them. Yes, by your standards, I suppose Earth would be considered quite deadly. But we haven't even gotten to the interesting parts yet. He reached for another container. Now let me show you something we call a house cat, a small predator that many humans keep in their sleeping quarters. The medical staff quickly prepared more revival units. They had a feeling they'd need them. The small containment unit hummed as Professor Gray activated its transparent walls. Inside, a regular orange tabby cat sat washing its paw, completely uninterested in the audience of terrified alien students. This is Max, a standard Earth feline, Tom explained. He's about 6 Earth years old and belongs to my daughter. She insisted I bring him for show and tell. Blue, still recovering from the grass revelation, floated forward in their crystalline environmental bubble. Professor, my scanners must be malfunctioning. They show this creature has multiple weapons built into its body. Oh, your scanners are working perfectly, Tom smiled. Retractable claws, powerful jaw muscles, enhanced night vision, incredible agility, and a complex digestive system that can process raw meat. All standard features for a house cat. Raw meat. Spark's plasma form dimmed considerably. You mean it consumes the unprocessed tissue of other life forms? Indeed, most Earth predators do. Tom reached into the containment unit. Several students gasped and scratched Max behind the ears. The cat began to purr. It's producing sonic vibrations, Rock exclaimed, their silicon form quivering. Is it charging for an attack? Tom laughed. No, that's purring. It means he's happy. Now, Blue, since you're our top student, would you like to conduct a detailed analysis? The containment field will keep you perfectly safe. Blue's crystalline structure sparkled with academic pride. They moved their bubble closer, extending their most sensitive scanning apparatus. Professor, this creature's muscle density is remarkable, Blue began. And its reaction speed. That can't be right. They adjusted their scanners. According to this, it could move faster than most of our species' defense drones. Correct again, Tom nodded. Cats can reach high speeds in short bursts and land on their feet from almost any position. We call it the righting reflex. But what purpose does such a dangerous creature serve? Another student asked. Surely you don't let them near your young. Tom pulled up a holographic image of his daughter sleeping with Max curled up next to her. The entire class erupted in shocked whistles, chirps, and other alien expressions of disbelief. We find them comforting, Tom explained. Many Earth humans keep cats as companions. They help us relax. You find apex predators relaxing. Administrator Light's glow had faded to a concerned flicker. Oh, cats aren't apex predators, Tom corrected. On Earth, that would be us, humans. The silence that followed was deafening. Blue's scanning appendage trembled slightly. Professor, Blue asked carefully, are you saying that your species is even more dangerous than this creature? Would you like to see the data? Tom offered. He pulled up a comparison chart of human and cat capabilities. While cats have many impressive features, humans can outperform them in several areas. For instance, we have better endurance, more precise fine motor control, and something we call opposable thumbs. He demonstrated by picking up a piece of lab equipment, causing several students to flinch at his dexterity. But the most interesting part, Tom continued, reaching for another container, is our intelligence and tool use. Speaking of which, it's almost lunchtime. Would anyone like to see what humans typically eat? Blue's environmental bubble automatically backed away. Professor, with all due respect, if your companion animals are this lethal, I'm not sure we're prepared to learn about your food. Oh, don't worry, Tom said, opening the container. I just brought some simple snacks. Nothing too exciting. Just some chocolate, coffee, and a few hot peppers. The medical staff, who had just finished reviving the latest batch of fainted students, immediately began preparing more recovery units. Max yawned, showing his sharp teeth, and went back to grooming himself, while the class watched in horror as their Deathworlder professor prepared to reveal even more terrifying secrets about Earth life. Professor Gray placed 3 containers on his desk, a chocolate bar, a steaming cup of coffee, and a bright red chili pepper. The alien students' environmental sensors immediately began flashing warning signals. These, Tom said casually, are some of humanity's favorite treats. Let's start with this one. He held up the chocolate bar. This contains a compound called theobromine, which most Earth mammals find toxic. Humans, however, eat it for pleasure. Blue's crystalline form shimmered with academic interest, despite their obvious fear. Your species intentionally consumes toxic substances. For enjoyment? Oh yes, Tom smiled, unwrapping the chocolate. We even give this to children as rewards. He took a bite, causing several students to activate their emergency protocols. Professor, Administrator Light flashed in alarm. Our sensors detect multiple dangerous compounds in that substance. Indeed, Tom agreed, finishing the chocolate. It also contains caffeine, which brings us to our next item. He lifted the coffee cup, and the steam caused nearby environmental bubbles to retreat further. That liquid is releasing visible vapor. Sparks plasma form, pulsed rapidly, and it's at a temperature that would denature most protein structures. Correct again, Tom said. We call this coffee. Humans typically start their day by drinking this hot beverage containing multiple stimulant compounds. He took a long sip, and 3 more students had to be rushed to the medical bay. Rock's silicon-based form ground in distress. You ingest superheated liquids containing nerve-affecting chemicals as a morning ritual. Many of us can't properly function without it, Tom confirmed. Some humans drink 4 or 5 cups daily. The medical staff began distributing calming agents to the remaining conscious students. But wait, Tom continued, picking up the red chili pepper. This might be the most interesting one. This is what we call a ghost pepper. It contains a compound called capsaicin that causes a burning sensation. Burning sensation. Blue's voice wavered. You mean it causes physical damage? Not exactly, Tom explained. It just tricks our pain receptors into thinking we're being burned. Many humans actively seek out this sensation in their food. Some even compete to eat the hottest peppers. A student with a gaseous form condensed so rapidly they had to be rescued from the bottom of their environmental bubble. Professor, Blue asked, their crystal structure vibrating with a mix of horror and fascination. Are you saying humans intentionally trigger their pain responses during the consumption of nutrients for entertainment? Exactly. Tom beamed. In fact, this isn't even the hottest pepper we have. Would you like to see the readings for a Carolina Reaper? No. The entire class shouted in unison. Tom shrugged and took a bite of the ghost pepper. The class watched in terrified silence as their professor consumed what their sensors indicated was a potent chemical weapon. You know, Tom said, wiping his mouth, these are just our snacks. Would you like to learn about some of our main dishes? For instance, there's this fermented cabbage dish called kimchi. Fermented. Administrator Light interrupted. You deliberately let your food rot. Oh, not just cabbage, Tom replied cheerfully. We ferment all sorts of things. Grapes into wine, grain into beer, soybeans into sauce. Some of our most prized foods are carefully controlled rot. Blue's scanning appendage drooped. Professor, are you telling us that humans intentionally consume 1. Known toxins. 2. Superheated stimulants. 3. Pain-inducing compounds. 4. Rotted organic matter. And you consider this normal? Absolutely, Tom nodded. In fact, many humans consider a meal boring without at least a few of these elements. Now, who would like to see what happens when we combine them all? The medical staff officially ran out of recovery units as the remaining conscious students tried to process the fact that human dietary habits would qualify as chemical warfare on most worlds. After a brief recess to allow the medical staff to revive unconscious students and restock their emergency supplies, Professor Gray moved on to the next phase of his lecture. The remaining students watched nervously as he pulled up a new holographic display. Now that we've covered basic Earth conditions and diet, let's talk about human defense mechanisms, Tom said, bringing up an image of the human immune system. This is how our bodies fight off invasive organisms. Blue, who had finally stopped trembling from the food demonstration, raised an appendage. Professor, these readings suggest your immune system actively attacks unknown entities. Isn't that incredibly dangerous? Oh yes, Tom nodded cheerfully. Our immune system is essentially an internal army. It attacks anything it doesn't recognize. Sometimes it even attacks things it shouldn't, but we usually survive that too. Survive. Your own defense system attacking you. Rock's silicon structure creaked in disbelief. We call those allergies or autoimmune responses, Tom explained. Some humans are even allergic to that water vapor we discussed earlier. Their bodies treat rain as a threat, but they adapt and keep going. A wave of horrified murmurs swept through the class. But that's not even the interesting part, Tom continued. Let me show you what happens when humans face physical threats. He displayed a video of human cellular repair processes. This can't be right. Spark flickered rapidly. Your cells deliberately cause localized destruction to promote healing. The energy release alone should be fatal. That's inflammation, Tom explained. And yes, it's part of our standard healing process. We actually get stronger after being injured. Our muscles, bones, and immune system all adapt to damage by becoming more resilient. Administrator Like's glow had dimmed to a worried flicker. Are you saying humans become more dangerous after being harmed? Exactly, Tom beamed. We call it what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. It's a common saying on Earth. Several students' environmental bubbles automatically engage their maximum security protocols. But wait until you hear about adrenaline, Tom continued, pulling up another display. This is what happens when humans face extreme stress or danger. The class watched in horror as data scrolled across their screens. Increased strength, enhanced speed, reduced pain sensitivity, improved focus, and temporary immunity to serious injury. Your bodies. Blue's crystal structure vibrated in shock. Your bodies have an emergency system that turns you into combat units. It saved my life a few times, Tom admitted. There are documented cases of humans lifting vehicles, running for hours without rest, or continuing to fight despite severe injuries when adrenaline kicks in. Professor, a gaseous student swirled anxiously. Are you saying humans can temporarily ignore physical damage? Oh, that's not temporary, Tom corrected. Humans can push through shocking amounts of damage even without adrenaline. We call it mind over matter. Our brains can simply decide to ignore pain and keep going. The medical staff began distributing stronger calming agents to the class. In fact, Tom added, humans often deliberately damage their muscles through something called exercise to become stronger. We regularly tear down our own tissue so it rebuilds better. You intentionally harm yourselves to become more powerful. Administrator Like's glow flickered in patterns that suggested they were considering calling security. Most humans do it daily, Tom confirmed. We have special buildings dedicated to it. Some even do it as a hobby. Blue's scanning appendage trembled as they asked, Professor, is there anything humans don't treat as a challenge to overcome through becoming more resilient? Well, Tom thought for a moment. We did recently discover some deep-sea creatures that we can't safely interact with yet, but we're working on it. Now, who wants to see what happens when we combine adrenaline with those foods we discussed earlier? The medical staff quietly sent out an urgent request for additional recovery units. They had a feeling they were going to need them. Professor Gray shuffled through his notes, preparing to discuss the combination of human adrenaline and their unusual dietary habits. As he moved the papers, something unexpected happened. He got a paper cut on his finger. Oh, just a moment, Tom said casually, looking at the small cut on his index finger. The reaction from the class was instant and chaotic. Environmental bubbles shot toward the ceiling, emergency alarms blared, and several students began broadcasting distress signals. Code red. The Death Worlder has been breached. Administrator Light's form blazed with emergency patterns. Medical team, prepare emergency containment. We need to stop the contamination. Tom looked up, puzzled by the commotion. Everyone, please calm down. It's just a paper cut. Just a paper cut. Blue's crystal form vibrated so intensely they nearly shattered their environmental bubble. Your structural integrity has been compromised. Your internal fluids are exposed to open air. Tom watched with amusement as a drop of blood welled up on his finger. Yes, this happens to humans all the time. Watch this. He pulled out a simple band-aid from his pocket. Professor, don't touch the wound. Spark pulsed frantically. The medical team will be here with a stasis field any moment. That won't be necessary, Tom said, wiping the blood away with a tissue. See, it's already starting to clot. The class watched in horrified fascination as Tom's blood began to coagulate. He held up his finger so they could scan it. Is your blood attacking the air? Rock asked, their silicon form grinding in distress. In a way, Tom explained, applying the band-aid. Human blood contains platelets that automatically form barriers when exposed to air. It's part of our rapid healing process. Rapid healing. A gaseous student condensed in shock. You mean you can repair structural damage without medical intervention? Of course, Tom smiled. This cut will be mostly healed by tomorrow. In fact, he pulled up a medical display. Let me show you what's happening at the cellular level right now. The class watched in stunned silence as the display showed the complex cascade of healing processes already at work in Tom's small wound. Your cells, Blue observed with scientific horror. They're multiplying and moving purposefully. They're literally rebuilding your damaged tissue. Exactly. Tom beamed. And the best part is, the healed area will be stronger than before. Human skin becomes more resilient at injury sites. Administrator Light's glow had faded to a bare shimmer. Are you saying that minor injuries make humans more durable? That's right, Tom confirmed. It's like our bodies learn from each injury. Calluses, scar tissue, bone remodeling. All of these make us tougher. Professor, Blue asked hesitantly, what would happen if you got a bigger cut? Oh, the process is basically the same, just on a larger scale, Tom explained. Humans can heal from quite severe injuries. We can regrow damaged liver tissue, repair broken bones, and even regenerate parts of our nervous system. The medical team, who had finally arrived with their stasis equipment, stopped in their tracks. You can regenerate your nervous system, one of the medical staff whispered in terror. Within limits, yes, Tom nodded. Our bodies are constantly repairing and replacing damaged cells. Would you like to see the data on how humans heal from major bone fractures? The way the bones knit themselves back together is fascinating. 3 more students fainted at the mere suggestion. The medical staff, still holding their unused emergency equipment, began to understand why their standard protocols might be insufficient for dealing with humans. Now, Tom said, adjusting his band-aid, shall we get back to discussing how adrenaline affects our digestion of capsaicin? The class had never been so quiet. As the final hour of the lecture approached, Professor Gray looked out at his thoroughly shaken class. The medical staff had finally convinced the remaining conscious students to return to ground level, though their environmental bubbles maintained maximum protection. Even Max the cat, still grooming himself in his containment unit, now drew wary looks from the alien students. Before we conclude, Tom said, I'd like to address something I noticed at the beginning of our session. Many of you view humans as primitive because we come from what you call a death world. But let me ask you this. What makes a species advanced? Blue's crystalline form sparkled thoughtfully. Technological achievement, scientific understanding, mastery over our environment. All excellent points, Tom nodded. But consider this. Humans achieved spaceflight just a few centuries after discovering electricity. We went from horse-drawn carriages to faster-than-light travel in less than 300 years. But how? Spark pulsed with confusion. Such rapid development should have caused societal collapse. Because of everything we've discussed today, Tom explained. Humans are adaptable. We evolved in an environment that tried to kill us every day, so we learned to turn adversity into advantage. Our bodies heal stronger, our minds grow more resilient, and our society advances through challenges, not in spite of them. Rock's silicon form shifted uncomfortably. You mean your hostile environment was beneficial? Exactly. Tom smiled. Earth's gravity made our bones dense and strong. The oxygen-rich atmosphere supercharged our metabolism. Predators taught us to be clever, and poisons taught us chemistry. Even our habit of eating strange substances led to crucial medical discoveries. Administrator Light floated forward. Professor, are you suggesting that what we consider primitive survival traits are actually advantages? Now you're getting it, Tom said. Humans don't just survive. We adapt and thrive. We take dangerous things and make them work for us. We turned wolves into dogs, wild grains into agriculture, and deadly bacteria into medicine. We even learned to harness radiation for healing. The class murmured in astonishment as they began to see their primitive lecturer in a new light. But most importantly, Tom continued, humans never stop exploring, never stop questioning. Right now, some of us are probably trying to figure out how to survive in deep space without equipment, just because someone said it was impossible. Blue raised an appendage hesitantly. Professor, earlier you mentioned deep-sea creatures you couldn't safely interact with, yet. Are you saying humans intend to adapt to that too? Of course. Tom laughed. We're probably designing pressure suits and genetic modifications already. Humans see every barrier as a challenge, every impossible task as an opportunity. That's terrifying. Administrator light flickered. That's humanity. Tom corrected kindly. We're not the most advanced species by your standards, but we might be one of the most persistent. We don't just use technology. We adapt, improvise, and overcome. He began packing up his samples, including the now empty coffee cup that still made nearby sensors shriek in alarm. Remember this lesson when you encounter humans in your future careers. We may seem primitive, but we're primitive like a virus is primitive. Simple, adaptable, and incredibly hard to stop. As the students filed out, keeping a respectful distance from their professor, Blue lingered behind. Professor, they asked, one final question. You walked up 20 levels of stairs to reach this classroom when we have gravity lifts. Why? Tom grinned, picking up Max's containment unit. Oh, I just wanted some exercise. It's leg day. Blue's crystal structure paled as they remembered the lecture on how humans deliberately damaged their muscles to grow stronger. They watched their Deathworlder professor whistle as he walked out, carrying his predator companion, and realized that perhaps being advanced wasn't everything in this dangerous galaxy. After all, what good was being advanced if you couldn't even handle a cup of coffee?